A very good morning to all of you. I welcome you all to Ansarkari. So let's start with today's analysis video. Firstly, we'll be taking up the Hindu newspaper. And we are seeing logjam in the parliament. It is neither working and it is just being adjourned. So neither side is backing down. Parliament logjam runs on. So both the houses put together, they function for just 5 minutes and 45 seconds on Thursday as pandemonium breaks out over Rahul's speech and Adani row, and opposition MPs, they form a human chain. In this picture you can see. So the opposition parties members, they are saying that they're not being allowed to speak in the parliament, so that's why basically there is even a clash going on inside the parliament, and it is not able to function, and that is obviously not a good sign of democracy. Moving forward, all these are political news. So wait continues in Tamil Nadu for center's Penniar tribunal. 3-month deadline that was fixed by the Supreme Court was expired last week, and the state is awaiting union government's next course of action efforts to settle the dispute through talks that had failed. So Tamil Nadu, it opposes the work on a check dam across the Markandeya, which is a Pennayar's tributary by Karnataka. So colonialism cannot be a forgotten factor in understanding the problems and the dangers of the today's world. So still in stalemate to begin with, residual powers from the end of the earlier era of colonization, usually the result of untidy departures by the colonial powers, still remain dangerously stalemated, and dramatic events in East Timor in 1999, they are no longer fresh in the memory, and the more recent wars of neither Afghanistan nor Myanmar, they can be attributed to colonialism. But no closure seems in sight in the Western Sahara, Jammu and Kashmir, or in those old standbys of Cyprus and Palestine, all messy legacies of colonialism. But it is not just the direct results of colonialism that remains relevant. There are the indirect ones as well. And the intellectual history of colonialism is littered with many willful cause of more recent conflict. So one is quite simple that is careless anthropology, the Belgian classification of Hutus and Tutsis in Rwanda and Burundi, which reified a distinction that had not existed before, continues to haunt the region of African Great Lakes. So, danger from a mixed history. A mixed colonial history within one modern state is also a potential source of danger. When a state has more than one colonial past, its future is vulnerable. And secessionism, after all, it can be prompted by a variety of factors: historical, geographical, and cultural, as well as the ethnic factors. So, ethnicity or language hardly seem to be a factor in the secessions these days. Of Eritrea from Ethiopia and the Republic of Somaliland from Somalia. So here, the factor is not ethnicity or language when they're demanding the separation. Rather, it was different colonial experiences that set them off, at least in their own self-perceptions, from the rest of their ethnic compatriots. And boundaries which are drawn in the colonial times, even if they were unchanged after independence, they still create enormous problems of national unity, especially in Africa. So, civil conflict along the ethnic or the regional lines can arise when the challenge of nation building within the colonially drawn boundaries becomes insurmountable. There's crisis of governance also because of the history of colonialism. So state failure in the wake of colonialism is another evident source of conflict as the byproduct of an unprepared, newly independent state's inability to govern. So the crisis of governance in many African countries that is real and abiding cause for the concern in world affairs today, and collapse of effective central governments as a manifest in we see in Sierra Leone, in South Sudan recently, and in Libya and Somalia before that. So that could unleash a torrent of alarming possibilities. There could be a number of weak states, particularly in Africa, seem vulnerable to collapsing in a welter of conflict. And then there is underdevelopment also, which is again a cause of conflict in the past colonial societies. So the uneven development of infrastructure in a poor country as a result of priorities which were skewed for the benefit of the colonialist, it can lead to resources being distributed unevenly, which in turn leads to increasing fissures in a society between those from the neglected regions. So as it promotes inequality, so that can be another reason for conflict. And even in the third decade of the 21st century, therefore, it seems ironically clear that tomorrow's anarchy might still be due in no small part to yesterday's colonial attempts at order. So I have no wish to give those politicians in post-colonial countries whose leadership has been found wanting in the present any reason to find excuses for their failures in the past. But in looking to understand the possible future sources of conflict in our times, we have to realize that sometimes the best crystal ball is a rear view mirror. So it is important to have a look at history and understand it. What were the reasons and how did it lead to the emergence of conflicts because of different factors. So testing times in Feb, we saw there was a sharp drop in the foreign trade, and it requires a nuanced policy attention because we cannot afford our trade sector to suffer a lot. But given that there is weak global demand, we know that कि globally demand कम हो रही है, there is a global slowdown. So because of that, we are seeing कि हमारा export कम हो रहा है. But at the same time, yesterday we also saw कि imports भी कम हो रहे हैं, तो इसकी वजह से trade deficit कम हो रहा है. And this article is saying that we need a nuanced policy in order to ensure that foreign trade is not hampered much because of slowdown in global demand. So we need to look at certain other opportunities in order to boost our foreign trade. And this we have discussed a lot of number of times that what can be the solutions. So I'll not be repeating that again. So resilient economic data from major markets of the past couple of months had infused a belief that the world economy may just end up avoiding the worst that was feared in 2023. So पहले हम expect कर रहे थे कि there would be a very like deep recession, but right now as per the numbers we are saying ki, and we expect ki there there wouldn't be any basically worst of situation. So there can be a weakened form of recession. So retail sales in US, which is India's largest export destination, that have increased 3% in January, which is a positive surprise, but it slumped in February. So failures at two US banks. So we saw that two banks that failed in US, and one of them, that is the Silicon Valley Bank, was the largest one to fail after the 2008 global financial crisis. And then the disclosure of the vulnerabilities by the European banking credit suisse amid the US Federal Reserve's scramble to rein in inflation suggests this momentum may not turn around anytime soon. So because of the bank's failure and the sentiment and the scenario around the world, specifically because of the failure of the two US banks. And yesterday we also discussed about how the situation is that the situation in US it is impacting the banks in Europe. So right now we are not expecting the situation would turn around and again that demand would start increasing. And with manufacturing already shrinking for the two quarters, it is a sustained spell of spilling shipments. It could mean that factory job losses and it dent the consumption. So in the manufacturing sector, we are also seeing already that it is shrinking, and this could have a negative impact upon the jobs and also the consumption. And government is also looking to curb the inessential imports to keep the deficit in check amid the weaker exports. But this is tricky territory where factors such as quality, pricing, supply chain linkages, all of that matter, and missteps could curb the consumer choice. So obviously जब हम बात करते हैं कि हमें अपनी imports कम करने हैं, so उसमें it is not easier said than done. So उसमें बहुत सारे factors like quality of imports, उनके prices कैसे fluctuate करते हैं, उसके ऊपर भी obviously value of imports depends, and supply chain linkages. So this is a supply side factor which is not in our control. So अगर supply global supply कम हो रहा है तो obviously जो prices of imports that would increase, and that would also increase the trade deficit. So with the deficit, it is already constricted sharply over January and Feb from the record of $29.2 billion level hit last September. Policy bandwidth may be better used to support the exporters to tap new markets and recent more nimbly to fast shifting the dynamics in key markets. So the long deferred rejig of the 2015-20 foreign trade policy must not be delayed any further at any cost. And yesterday also we looked into this key we are expecting the new foreign trade policy in the month of March. So that is there. So talking about the internal security, so tested but tired, this force could be in distress. So a day of remembrance of the Pulwama attack passed yet again last month. That was on 14th of February. And it happened in 2019, which claimed as the 40 personnel who were a part of the Central Reserve Police Force. So this is India's largest paramilitary force, and Pulwama attack, it was different as it resulted in unprecedented public outcry. So the emotional response it evoked in the country cut across all the sections of the society. So before this dark day on 6th April 2010, 76 CRPF personnel, they were felled by left-wing extremists numbering in their hundreds in Dantewada district in Chhattisgarh. So this was because of an internal factor when we talk about the 6th April incidents. So it is saddening that this terrible attack had faded away from the public attention, even though it was another dark day. So it remains the deadliest attack on the security forces in any counter-insurgency or anti-terrorist operations in independent India. So how can we forget such instances? And talking about internal security, so this whole article is focused upon that. And the author of this article, he is a former Inspector General of the Northeastern Sector of the Central Reserve Police Force. So saying that the internal security scenario in the country, it has been showing marginal improvement, especially in the insurgency affected Northeast India. But one can say that there has been insignificant improvement in the left-wing extremism areas and also terrorist-affected Kashmir. So it is here that the point about the deployment level is of relevance. So de-induction of the Indian Army has taken place with the void filled mainly by CRPF. So hence, personnel of these forces, they continue to be tasked with carrying out hard duties and they're overstretched without any rest or respite. So as a consequence, training becomes compromised. So the need to hone the tactical skills that cannot be overlooked as it would adversely reflect in the operational capabilities of any force. So central government has been compelled to entrust a number of assignments that are becoming riskier by the day to these forces, especially CRPF, because of the force's versatility and flexible operation procedures. So the huge and continuous deployment of the regular army would invite adverse attention from the international press, and consequently the perspective of other world nations would also be colored. So it is natural that CRPF it pays for its hard way, and cursory glance of records in the various operation theaters in India in the last few years would reveal the high casualty rates suffered by the paramilitary forces. So right now we are seeing that more burden is being put on CRPF forces, and there's a need for parity. So what makes the observance of Pulwama Day different from the previous is that former personnel and their families, they turned up in large numbers in different parts of the country this year to demand the old pension scheme to serving members of the fraternity. And the old pension scheme, it was stopped for the personal joining service after December 31st, 2003. So they cited that the Delhi High Court order of December 2022 that reiterated their status as a force under the category of armed forces of the Union. So it is no surprise that a day of remembrance was used to give went to the pent-up feelings of discrimination vis-a-vis the regular armed forces, which includes an army, Indian Navy, and the Indian Air Force, in matters that range from pension to service facilities, such as the canteen stores department. So that's there. And the most important goal in observing the Pulwama Day should be to avoid a repeat of that day, a dark day in 2019. Obviously, it is very important that such instances they are not repeated in future, and the lessons learned will have to be analyzed and corrective measures be taken. So for the government, it would be only appropriate and befitting to listen to the genuine grievances of the personals or the forces concerned as the public opinion seems to be mobilized in favor of the paramilitary forces, and the morale of these personnel needs to be kept high. So it would help the security environment of the nation if paramilitary personnel feels that they are being treated on a par with the comparable defense forces personnel. So all of that is very important when it comes to maintaining our internal security. So this article is in a way indirectly it is focusing upon increasing the minimum age of marriage for females from 18 to 21. And that bill is yet to be passed in the parliament. So we'll not go into much details as of now. So India's seafood exports to Ukraine, they have sharply declined from 11.2 million in April, January to 1.36 million dollars only. So there's been a very sharp decline in our seafood exports to Ukraine. Obviously, that's because of the war. So the all-powerful Sri Lankan presidency. So in the context of Sri Lanka, what is important for us to know is their 13th Amendment in the Constitution. And in one of the articles and in one of the videos, we've discussed all of that in detail. I guess that was in the Hindu only. So what is the 13th Amendment? What are the people demanding? How is it related to India? And how India is coming to the rescue of Sri Lanka. So we know about their economic situation and the reason behind that. And majorly their economy depends upon revenue from tourism. So that was impacted because of COVID-19. But again, the second and the most important factor was the China's debt policy, which is responsible for the current economic situation of Sri Lanka. And even the political situation is not stable there. So that is also one of the factors. So Supreme Court finally reserves the judgment on the Maharashtra political row, and Justice P.N. Narasimha says that there is no freedom in the regional parties. So bench deliberates on whether the governor can call for trust vote on being approached by a group of MLAs who have left the party. So this is a very, very important question. कि क्या governor vote of trust स्टेट असेंबली में लेके आ सकता है या नहीं जब ग्रुप ऑफ एमएलएज अप्रोच करते हैं गवर्नर को टू ब्रिंग अ ट्रस्ट वोट इन द स्टेट लेजिस्लेटिव असेंबली जब वो एक पॉलिटिकल पार्टी को छोड़ देते हैं तो बेसिकली यहाँ पे डिस्क्वालिफिकेशन वाला एस्पेक्ट है and powers of governor and stability of the political environment in the states. So that is there, and we'll be looking into the Supreme Court judgment finally. And many a time it is a family which runs a regional party, and there is no scope of anybody else coming into the frame. So there is no alternative, it is impossible. So that's one belief by Justice P.S. Narasimha कि कुछ political parties ऐसी है which are only run by the family and कोई और scope नहीं है. So the Supreme Court it addressed the former Maharashtra Chief Minister Uddhav Thackeray on how there is an absolute lack of freedom within the regional political parties, which are mostly run by single families. So there's absolutely no freedom in the regional parties except for one leader that is obviously is running, who's heading that party. And many a time it is a family which runs it, and there is no scope of anybody else coming into the frame. So there is no alternative for them to leave the party. So it is impossible. And apart from that, the remark it came during the final day of the hearing of the political dispute between Maharashtra's Chief Minister Eknath Shinde and Mr. Thakur on the control of Shiv Sena and the circumstances that led to the fall of Mahavikas Aghadi government in the state in 2022. So the judgment has been reserved. So accordance of acceptance on necessity is a significant step as India is venturing into development of marine diesel engines. So this is acceptance of necessity for capital acquisition proposals. It is estimated at rupees 70,500 crores. So some of the projects they having a long gestation projects, so which involves the indigenous design and development, including the development of the marine diesel engines. So here we have the advanced towards the artillery gun systems. Along with we have the high mobility vehicles and the gun towing vehicles for the army. So we've been focusing on self-reliance when it comes to the defense sector in India. So we also have like indigenous BrahMos cruise missiles. We have Shakti electronic warfare, which is EW systems, utility helicopters, and maritime, among other things. So that's there. So in accordance of the acceptance of necessity for medium speed marine diesel engine is a significant step, as for the first time India is venturing into the development and manufacturing of such engines indigenously to achieve self-reliance. So Union Law Minister says that the Election Commission of India's proposal to allow e-postal ballot for the overseas voters that is under review. So it is being discussed with the Ministry of External Affairs to iron out the logistical challenges that would be there. So that's there. So in this context, all the election reforms, electoral reforms that we talk about, all that becomes important and the topic becomes important. So you need to be like aware that do NRIs have the voting powers and how they can do. So what is the current system of casting vote by the NRIs in India? India reports over 700 COVID cases in one day. So we are seeing a spike in the COVID-19 cases again. And Health Ministry directs 6 states, which have the highest level of infections, to assess the situation at the micro level, adopt a strategy of proactive testing, treating, vaccination. So India reported over 2,000 new cases in the week ending 8th of March. And now they have increased to 3,264 in the week ending 15 March. So you can see how sharply they have, again, we are seeing that they are increasing. So please maintain the COVID appropriate behavior. Please wear masks whenever you're going out of your homes. So the strategic Zojula Pass, it is located in the Greater Himalayan Range, and it acts as the gateway between the Union territories of Ladakh and Jammu and Kashmir. So it has been reopened by the Border Roads Organization. So NEMA's team sets record by cycling 5,000 kilometers in 6 nations. So it is a National Institute of Mountaineering and Adventure Sports, which is at Dirang in Arunachal Pradesh. It created a national record in cycling by covering 5,374 kilometers in 37 days across 6 Southeast Asian nations. So the team, it commenced the expedition from Hanoi in Vietnam, culminated it at the Indian National Army's memorial in Singapore. So NIOT, it is going to set up self-powered desalination plant in Lakshadweep. So setting up of its ongoing initiative of providing potable water on the 6 islands of Lakshadweep using the low temperature thermal desalination technology. This Chennai-based National Institute of Ocean Technology, it is working and making this process free of emissions. So currently the desalination plants, each of which provides at least 1 lakh liters of potable water every day, they are powered by diesel generator sets. So there being no other source of power on the islands. So that is why that is the case right now. And talking about the technology that is being used behind it, that is the low temperature thermal desalination. It exploits the difference in the temperature nearly of 15 degrees Celsius in the ocean water at the surface and at depths of about 600 feet. So this cold water, it condenses the water at the surface, which is warmer, but whose pressure has been lowered using the vacuum pumps. So such a depressurized water can evaporate even at the ambient temperature. So this resulting vapor when condensed is free of salts and contaminants, and then it becomes fit for consumption. So that's how desalination is done. And this is this picture. You can see the technology how it has been set up. So desalination plant, each would supply 1 lakh liters of water every day. It is now powered by diesel generator sets. So Poland is going to the first NATO member to give MiG-29 fighter jets to Ukraine. So we know about the proxy war related to Russia-Ukraine war, how NATO, how USA is supporting it, supporting basically Ukraine in this war. So China calls for calm and seeks peace talks between Russia and Ukraine. So China is concerned about an escalation of the war in Ukraine and wants Moscow and Kyiv to hold peace talks. And China hopes that all the parties will remain calm and resume peace talks as soon as possible. So we're seeing protests going on in Israel because the prime minister rejects compromise on reforms. And otherwise, also, the situation is not that too stable in basically between Israel and Palestine. So, need margin of safety amid the rising global uncertainty, says our chief economic advisor. So, said that the global uncertainty has been rising after the recent developments in the United States, and the governments, businesses, and individuals, they should keep margins of safety in fiscal, corporate, and savings account planning. So it is important that even if you have a savings account, so you need to have a proper plan of how you'll be using the funds, how much you'll be withdrawing out of that, how you'll be spending the funds. So that's very important, obviously, because of the failure of two banks in US, and one of the bigger one is being the Silicon Valley Bank. So it is very important to have plan, and that's how safely you can go ahead. So he said that the global growth estimates of the IMF given in January looks outdated, and countries, they will have to watch what the developments in the US over the last week would be to would do to confidence and bank lending growth, and also subsequent chain effects. So obviously one failure leads to so many consequences globally. So that's why situation is uncertain because of that. And yesterday we talked about how it has impacted Ukraine very like massively, but and not a major impact on India as of now. So the South Indian retail jewelry market is still underexplored. And this is coming from the German Jewelry Export Promotion Council. So this council is now focusing on taking South India's underexplored jewelry businesses to global buyers through trade shows and promotions. So that's how basically they're trying to increase the trade. So again, we are seeing that should you be worried about the H3N2 cases? So we are seeing this flu cases are also increasing, and then again at the same time, COVID-19 cases are also on the rise. So it is influenza A subtype H3N2, which is the cases are on rise, and few deaths have also been reported. So government says that it's keeping a close watch on the situation, and it has also issued some advisories. So what is H3N2 virus? There are basically four types of flu viruses, A, B, C, and D, and of these only A and B, they are known to cause seasonal outbreaks or epidemics among the humans. So C causes mild illness and D does not affect the humans. And there are over 130 types of subtypes of A, which are based on a combination of hemagglutinin H, which is basically H, and N is the neuraminidase proteins, which are found in nature. So H3N2 is one of the two A subtypes routinely circulating among the humans. So here H and N I've told you, N is the protein, both of these are proteins. So H is the hemagglutinin and N is the neuraminidase proteins. And This is not over the very first time the outbreak has been witnessed. So it basically routinely circulate amongst the humans, and other one being the H1N1 influenza B. It is another circulating strain. So these are most common ones. So the 1968 Hong Kong flu, which killed millions, was caused by the H3N2, whereas 2009 swine flu pandemic came from a novel strain of H1N1 virus. So is the current flu outbreak, it is unusual or not? So WHO estimates that 1 billion flu cases they occur every year, for of which 3 to 5 million they are severe, causing between 2,90,000 to 6,50,000 deaths also. So most recently, Australia have reported over 2,20,000 flu cases in 2022. And in India, until 9th of March, it had a total of 3,000 cases reported this year. So here we see in India, it is H3N2 being the predominant subtype. So in annual data on H1N1 infections in India suggests a sporadic pattern in the rise of cases with a dip in 2020 and 21. And what is the reason behind, what is the cause behind the recent surge of H3N2 cases? So we report flu cases throughout the year, and there are two peak seasons. So one is the post-monsoon, and then we have in January to March is the next peak season that is witnessed. So this could be because of a sudden increase in the exposure to the flu viruses once COVID appropriate behaviors such as wearing the mask and avoiding public spaces were relaxed. So air pollution worsened the situation by damaging the immune cells. And which population groups they are at risk? So obviously seasonal influenza, it infects 1 in 5 unvaccinated children and only basically 1 in 10 unvaccinated adults. So 5 groups, they are at high risk: children between aged 6 to 59 months, pregnant women, elderly, adults with comorbidity, and health workers. So it is very important to wear masks and be safe. So what are the precautions and some of the remedies? So as I said, it is important to wear mask and maintain social distancing. And then we have the antiviral drug. This oseltamivir, it is only recommended for the high risk population or in specific cases. So taking up Financial Express. So FPI reporting is to be made much more quicker and more transparent. So the foreign portfolio reporting. So in a bid to improve the transparency and ensure quicker reporting, the government has said that any material change in the structure, common ownership, or control of the foreign portfolio investors or investor group should be brought to the notice of the Securities and Exchange Board of India not later than 7 working days. And for new FPI registrations, the government has been it has given the SEBI board the power to ask for any additional documents which may be required. So FPI, they will also have to furnish information that has been found to be misleading or false in any material respect. So PLI scheme is soon going to be expanded for toys, bicycles, and furniture. And they basically help in increasing the domestic production. So that's how basically that would be creating more jobs and aiding the income of the workers. So in case of manufacturing, India is going to benefit from Asia's supply chain rejig. So let's see what is the change happening in supply chain and how is it going to benefit specifically the India's manufacturing sector. So India is well placed to benefit from the geopolitical and the recent economic trends that are driving the diversification of Asia's manufacturing supply chain. So strong, stable economy and access to large labor supply that will form the basis of its appeal to investors, according to the Economist Intelligence. And the agency also added that infrastructure development underway will reduce the logistics cost significantly. That would diminish an impediment to manufacturing. And it also said that India's technological readiness, a robust digital sector, rapid expansion of e-commerce, and the size and potential of its domestic markets, they are likely key drivers of the manufacturing investments in India. Besides the taxation system that's become less complex and cumbersome to navigate, so even that is going to help in increasing the ease of doing business. However, it cautioned that stiff competition from the pure emerging markets, specifically in the Southeast Asia, will make India's journey to becoming the major manufacturing power a long one. So definitely we have competition from the Southeast Asian economy. So the factors that we have discussed, they are, although they are common, but it is very important to understand them and know about them. And since the time and the cost overruns, they will remain challenges in India. Obviously, we know that the major challenge that we face is in terms of implementation, which leads to cost overruns. And there are basically, in terms of upgradation, the infrastructure that is going to be very long, because obviously infrastructure projects, they have long gestation periods. So given that, these are some of the factors that investors would be taking into consideration. And also, New Delhi's push to sign multilateral trade deals will remain a major competitive disadvantage. So, streamlining the labor laws across states will remain a challenge too. So, moving forward, so India is going to see a massive growth in the working age population over this decade. So, this map is basically also depicting the same thing. So, in India, it would be around 113.5. In China, it is going in negative. So obviously that would be one of the factors for the investors to move out of China and shift towards India. And looking at other Southeast Asian economies, so it is highest in case of Indonesia, followed by Philippines and Vietnam. So India has the highest potential, we can say. And amongst the large emerging economies, India has a cheap skilled labor. So when we have a look at India, so we can see the figures, they are higher than that of the Southeast Asian economies, except Vietnam, Philippines, Thailand, and Maldives. So there is an average monthly earnings of the employees in 2020 by skill levels in dollars. So Maldives, Thailand, Philippines, Vietnam, they have more than India. Even Bhutan is more than India's. So efficiency of the Indian ports, that has improved, and the national highway network, that has also expanded rapidly. Manufacturing projects, they have risen in recent years, and FDI has also steadily risen. So we have been focusing and talking a lot about the green hydrogen mission and green energy transition as well. So there is high production cost that may play a spoil sport. So that is one of the factors or challenges when we talk about energy transition, specifically in the context of green hydrogen. So at present, when we talk about the production, what is the method of producing hydrogen? So the green hydrogen, that is produced by splitting the water into hydrogen and oxygen using renewable power, and a combination of technology advancements and regulatory support needed to boost the cost competitiveness is important. And different players include L&T, RIL, Adani, ONGC, Bharat Petroleum, Indian Oil. They've already announced their green hydrogen plans. So it's called green because obviously the production of this type of hydrogen does not lead to the greenhouse gases emissions. So Bharti backed OneWeb is going to launch 36 satellites with ISRO on 26th of March. So Bharti backed satellite communications company OneWeb, it will launch 36 satellites with the Indian Space Research Organization from the Satish Dhawan Space Center in Sriharikota through ISRO's launch vehicle Mark 3. And the launch is critical for OneWeb in order to initiate its global coverage of the satellite communication in 2023. So US banking system remains sound, Yellen tells the Congress. So I can reassure the members of the committee that our banking system remains sound and that Americans they can feel confident that the deposits will be there when they need them. So this is coming from the US Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen. Obviously, there are fears in the minds of the common people and the investors. So Goldman Sachs and JPM, they expect hit to US economic growth. So the pressure on the small and mid-sized US banks following the swift downfall of the Silicon Valley Bank financial group could further slow the economy and it will likely raise the probability of a recession this year. So because of this event or this failure, we can expect recession coming soon. So Goldman Sachs raised its probability of the US economy entering a recession in the next 12 months by 10 percentage points to 35%, citing the stress on small banks. So this becomes very important. So the European Central Bank, it still sticks to rate hike plan despite the banking turmoil. So ignoring the investors, the bank ignored the calls by investors to stop tightening at least until the sentiment stabilizes. So we're not seeing the central banks right now. They do not feel that the interest rate they needs to be either they can maintain status quo, they can reduce it, but still they are they feel or they are going to increase the rates given the situation right now. So that is now basically in a way it is backfiring now. So healthcare for all, one earth, one health vision, it can become a reality only with the active global collaboration where the countries don't think of only themselves but of the collective global outcomes. So ENAM gathers pace. So with the private entities also roped in, farmers, they may be expected to get a better deal. So the government's farm reforms may be on the back burner, but there is no rolling back. It's a large digital Indian initiative that uses technology to deliver services to the farmers. So case in point is the progress of the electronic national agriculture market. And it was launched in 2016 to catalyze the digital transformation of the mandi or the marketplace operations for the trading of the agricultural commodities. So basically through this platform, farmers, they can trade their agricultural commodities at pan India level. So the objective was to create a transparent online competitive bidding system to enable the farmers to secure the remunerative prices for the produce. And since then, trade volumes on the ENAM platform have steadily gathered pace, improving market access of the farmers and creating a unified national market for the agricultural produce. And now there are like diverse number of commodities which are traded through the ENAM portal. So the progress towards one nation, one market, which enables efficient price discovery. It has been facilitated by the interstate trade, which has recently commenced with the farmers from Kashmir, Maharashtra, Rajasthan, selling their produce to buyers in Kerala, Odisha, Jharkhand, and Madhya Pradesh. So still there's a need to strengthen this platform further. So various suggestions in the past made by the apex chambers like FICCI in a 2017 report and agricultural economists like Ashok Gulati deserve consideration. So more agricultural market reforms, they are needed, starting with the basics of assaying, sorting, and grading facilities for the primary produce as per the nationally recognized and accepted standards, and suitable infrastructure at the mandi level, like having more godowns, more cold storages and dryers. That needs to be created to maintain those standards, and a national integrated dispute resolution mechanism is needed, and that is going to tackle the cases where the quality of goods delivered varies from what is shown and bid for on the electronic platform. So these can be some of the steps when we talk about further strengthening of this platform and specifically the marketing in the agricultural sector. So India's criminal justice system, it should be standardized, harmonized, and integrated. So we are far away from one country, one police, and one prison. And so no matter how good CCTNS is, it won't work till states vary widely on the criminal justice. So there's a sucker born every minute, and this formalism is an eternal truth, though its antecedents they are obscure. So in recent scam, we saw that 28 men from Tamil Nadu they succumbed to temptation, and on paying exorbitant sums, they were promised assorted jobs in Indian Railways, and they were subjected to fake training for 1 month also. So this training consisted of being stationed at New Delhi railway station, where they counted the number of trains that pass through different platforms. Despite most being engineering graduates, they didn't smell a rat, and given the variable quality of engineering graduates, probably thought they were being tested for numeracy. So that's how they were fooled. So basically, the bizarre scam is matched by one from Ludhiana as well, and a person posed as the central commander of crime and criminal tracking network systems. So that's how people are basically being fooled and acting as a CCTNS official. He and other scamsters they extracted money from the gullible young men who were basically they were issued fake IDs and promising them jobs as investigating officers in the CCTNS. So even the CCTNS system was basically misused by them. So CCTNS has been a work in progress for some time with earlier initiatives like Crime and Criminals Information System and the Common Integrated Police Application as precursors to it. So among the precursors, there are some state-specific initiatives as well. So the CCTNS system, it feeds into the interoperable criminal justice system, and so the later covers e-courts, e-prisons, forensics, prosecution, leveraging technology to make the criminal justice delivery more efficient. And on the other hand, this national database of the crime and criminals, it connects the police stations and digitizes FI registration, investigation, and charge sheets. So in a way, it is providing better governance, better e-governance. So this criminal justice system, it is meant to be a deterrent against crime, punishing the malified acts and protecting the bona fide ones. So if crime is committed, this requires investigation, FIR, charge sheet, prosecution, and successful conviction. So these are all the steps. And so for the tax purposes, India is now one country, or it will be one once all the indirect taxes they become part of the GST. So criminal justice systems they should also be standardized, harmonized, and integrated. And after all, the citizens should be entitled to the same level of law and order regardless of the residence. So even in case of criminal justice system, as we're talking about now, we having GST for all the indirect taxes, and we don't have so many taxes. So even in this case, when we're talking about the criminal justice system, it needs to be standardized, and every citizen should be entitled to the same level of law and order, regardless wherever they are residing. So there are basically variations amongst the states, and one of the reasons is understaffing in different states and different police stations. So both the police and prisons, they are in the state list of the 7th schedule, both prisons and the police. So in 2016, the Ministry of Home Affairs has brought out a model prison manual. Many states, they haven't adopted it, and they have not updated their old prison manuals also. So what will e-prisons achieve? For that matter, shouldn't the prisoners, they have access to the Aadhaar for enrollment and upgradation? So that makes prison administration easier. But of course, Aadhaar cannot be made mandatory, since being a prisoner cannot be interpreted as being a recipient of the government welfare benefits. So that's the case, and model police acts need to be there. So there's a bill. So we are like far away from the principle of one country, one police, and one prison idea as of now. And in this aspect of governance, if states they belong to two different worlds, no matter how good a tool CCTNS is, the benefits they will fall short. So it is important, basically, it is emphasizing that it is important to have a uniform standard all across India. The Japan Prime Minister said to outline open, free Indo-Pacific plan in his visit next week. So, 16 years after the Japan's then Prime Minister Shinzo Abe gave the seminal speech that the confluence of two seats in Indian Parliament, his successor is set to announce a new plan for free and open Indo-Pacific during his visit to India next week. So Kishida, who will be in India on 20th of March, is said to make the announcement in a speech organized by the Indian Council of World Affairs. So this is an Indian government-funded think tank, and so basically the expectations are that it would be including provisions of non-military equipment and infrastructure support for the countries in Indo-Pacific region that have been facing threats from Beijing's belligerence in the region, including the military buildup in the South China Sea. So we've been talking about different landfill sites and the solutions, the long-term solutions, because of the situation in the Brahmapuram landfill site, which is there in Kochi, Kerala. So in the context of Delhi, also now we are seeing that Balswa landfill will be cleared by the next March, as per the Chief Minister of the UT of Delhi. So China Watch, all you need to know is saying basically China, the GDP target that is pragmatic and that is achievable as per China. So stable development will help relieve the global economic pressures as per the Chinese analysts, and drive is on to raise their foreign trade and their investment. So basically they are focusing upon this thing. And yesterday also we talked in detail about what are going to be focus areas for China in coming times, and how basically they have, since they have reopened their economy after the COVID-19, so even they are one of the focus areas by the investors as well, and few of them are also moving out because of the increase in cost of production at the same time. And today also we saw that there, when we talk about the population in terms of the young population, so even that is negative. So there are certain factors which are proving India to be one of the attracted destinations for foreign investors who are moving out of China. So we've already discussed all these things. We'll not be going into the details again. So Norway Cares, Mrs. Chatterjee versus Norway, does not depict Norway's belief in value of family life, respect for different cultural systems. So the film projects cultural differences as a primary factor in the case, which is completely false. Without going into any details of this particular case, I categorically deny that feeding with the hands and sleeping in the same bed would be the reason for placing children in alternative care, and not in this case, and not in any case. So there's a film coming up, and regarding Norway, so not important for us. Eye of the Storm, attempted arrest of the Imran Khan, is another moment of crisis in Pakistan with no way out in sight. So we know that Pakistan is going through political instability, economic crisis at the same time. And then again, China is trying to come to the aid of Pakistan. So that's the situation. And even it is also being impacted because of the floods. So we saw that India won 2 Oscars, and this is basically a triumph of our soft power. So it showcases depth of India's diversity and inclusion. So Indian cinema has received recognition in the past at the Academy Awards as well, but these recent wins, they are special because they advance Indian interests in liberty, equality, fraternity, and justice. So they aim to enable social cohesion and bridge the social divisions. So basically this is also one of the factors which is most often missed by us. So government of India, with the help of non-state actors, would do well to holistically evaluate the impact of Indian cinema globally through the research studies. But in conclusion, the recent awardees, basically the song Natu Natu for from the movie RRR and the Elephant Whisperers, they represent India's strengths in diversity and inclusion, breaking away from stereotypes and showcasing the country's soft power to the world more persuasively. And by communicating the importance of India's tribal communities and exploring the contemporary lessons such as sustainability in a unique and simpler manner, so films like this contribute to India's global communication of its strengths in diversity and inclusion. So this is for the Elephant Whisperers movie, the bond between wildlife and humans. So this issue, it is sub judice as of now, and it is regarding basically giving legal status to the same-sex union, the same-sex marriages. And here, the Special Marriage Act of 1954 becomes important in this context. Supreme Court judgment of Navtej Singh Johar in 2018, it basically decriminalized homosexuality, and then we have different fundamental rights. So Article 21 is one of them. So we also have right to privacy in this context. So let's see what is going to be the final judgment in this matter, whether there'll be a bill that would be made by the parliament or Supreme Court would have to finally intervene in terms of what is going to be the final result for it. So coalition sends message to Beijing. Indian Navy also joins the drill in the Pacific. So anti-submarine warfare drills being staged by US, Canada, India, Japan, and South Korea. So the exercises do also come as China's Navy is taking part in a joint search and rescue exercises in the Gulf of Oman with Iran and Russia. And three of the countries, they are most at odds with the United States. So Iran, Russia, and China. And right now, China's dispute with Japan over the tiny islands in the East China Sea has also heated up recently, with both the sides accusing each other of violating their maritime autonomy. So again, the geography of the Indo-Pacific region becomes important. You need to find out where is the East China Sea located and which all countries they share the borders with the sea. So this topic is a repeat that Iran-Saudi deal, which is recently it was brokered by China. So what is the big gambit that holds for Beijing and for West Asia and for India? So we'll be just going into the India thing. So India's week-long silence on this thing. So Delhi, taken aback at China's new avatar in the rest of the world, took a week to break its silence on the deal, which is brokered by its principal adversary in a region where it has invested much diplomatic energy over the last decade. So we have seen the reports regarding this, and India has good relations with various countries in West Asia, and we have abiding interest in the region coming from the Ministry of External Affairs. And India has always advocated dialogue and diplomacy to resolve the differences. So China's big ticket diplomacy in the region is sure to impact I2, U2. So it includes India, Israel, US, and UAE grouping. And apart from that, it calls for India to work on its ties to the region independently of the US and in ways that project its civilizational and cultural links and the positive contributions of the Indian diaspora. So basically, how and why it would be impacting the I2U2 is that USA is basically deprioritizing this West Asian region, and since USA is obviously a part of I2U2, so that's how it can have an impact. So troubles that Credit Suisse, they are more relevant to India than the SVB bank's failures. So the Credit Suisse case is more relevant to India's financial system than our Silicon Valley Bank, as per the research from Jeffries. It said that India's banking sector will likely face a softer impact from the troubles at the Swiss lender, given the size of its presence in India. But while the foreign banks like the Credit Suisse, they have a relatively small presence in the country in terms of the loans, the deposits, and the assets, they are more active in the derivative markets, forex, and the interest rates. So that's how basically we are expecting that it could have a soft impact on India because it does not have that too large a market share in India, because it does not have basically a larger size in terms of loans and deposits and the assets that it have. So that is because it majorly functions in the derivative markets. So we need to watch out for the liquidity issues and any rub off on counterparty risk assessment, and the deposit market may move towards larger quality banks. So petrol and diesel sales, they drop in first half of the March, and India's fuel demand fell in the first half of March after posting record growth in the previous months. So that's all for today. Thank you for joining in, Sarkari, and you'll be also provided with the PDF link in the description box. And do not forget to subscribe to our channel. Thank you so much.